Welcome to Stock Talk. Today, we're doing a focused deep dive.
Yeah, we're digging into Reddit's Q1 2025 financials, their first big report post-IPO.
Exactly. We've got the official analysis right here, dated May 1st, 2025.
And our goal really is to figure out, what's driving these pretty impressive results.
Yeah, and what does it all signal for Reddit going forward? So what's the first thing that jumps out at you from this report?
Well, the headline numbers are quite something. Revenue's up 61% year over year.
$392.4 million. That's a big number.
It really is.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is how much faster that revenue grew compared to their user numbers.
Right. That really caught my eye, too. It suggests they're getting much better at, making money from the users they have.
Definitely. I mean, user growth was solid. Don't get me wrong. 31% on daily actives is nothing to sneeze at.
Sure.
But 61% revenue growth, that shows a real step up in monetization post-IPO, translating that engagement into dollars.
Mm-hmm. But for me, the even bigger story might be the profitability shift.
Oh, absolutely. That's the real headline grabber, isn't it?
Yeah. They actually posted a net income, $26.2 million.
Which is what, about 6.7% of revenue?
Exactly. And remember, net income is the bottom line, right? Profit after everything.
And you compare that to the same quarter last year?
A massive loss. Minus $575.1 million.
So that's a swing of over $600 million. $601.3 million improvement, to be precise.
It's just a staggering turnaround.
It really puts the scale of the shift into perspective. And it's not just the net income line either. Their adjusted EBITDA looks really strong too.
Yeah, $115.3 million. That's nearly 30% of revenue, 29.4%.
And, just to remind listeners, EBITDA gives you a sense of the core operational profit before things like interest, tax, depreciation.
Right, and in Reddit's case, they also pull out stock-based compensation and some other non-recurring items. So it's a clearer view of the underlying business performance.
And that performance looks pretty efficient. Look at the gross margin.
Oh, yeah. It went up by 190 basis points, or 1.9 percentage points.
Landing at 90.5%. That's a really high gross margin.
It is, and what that tells you is that their core platform is highly scalable. For almost every extra dollar of revenue, over 90 cents is gross profit before overheads.
Very efficient. And you see that efficiency reflected in their cash flow as well.
Mm-hmm. Free cash flow of $126.6 million.
Which points to a business that doesn't need huge amounts of capital investment to grow. Gives them flexibility.
A lot of breathing room, financially speaking. Okay, so the top-level picture is strong growth, big profitability improvement. Let's dig into the revenue side a bit more.
Right. What's fueling that 61% jump?
Well, advertising is clearly the main engine. It was up 61% too, hitting $358.6 million, so right in line with the overall growth.
Makes sense. But what about the other revenue? That looked interesting.
Yeah, it did. It grew even faster, actually, up 66% to $33.7 million.
Now, the report doesn't break that down in detail for Q1.
No, it doesn't.
But later on, when they talk opportunities, they mention things like data licensing, API access.
Right, so you have to assume that's part of what's driving this other revenue growth. It suggests they're starting to build streams beyond just ads.
Which could be really important long-term. Diversification,
Definitely. And it's not just total revenue, they're also making more per user.
Yeah, the ARPU average revenue per user is up 23% overall to $3.63.
So each user, on average, is generating more money for them than a year ago.
But there's a huge difference when you split it geographically.
Oh, yeah. The U.S. versus international ARPU. It's pretty stark.
It really is. What is it, $6.27 in the U.S.?
And just $1.34 internationally?
That is a massive gap. And it just screams potential, doesn't it? They can figure out how to monetize those international users better.
Huge upside. And speaking of international users, their overall user growth is being led by international markets, right?
Absolutely. Total daily actives, DAUQ as they call it, grew 31% to 108.1 million.
And weekly actives, WAUQ, also up 31% to 401.3 million. Similar growth.
But break it down. International DAUQ grew 41%.
Wow, 41%.
Compared to 21% growth in the U.S. So international is really driving the user count increase.
And international users are now the majority.
Yep. 54% of total daily active users are now outside the U.S.
So more than half your users are international, but they bring in drastically less revenue per person.
Precisely. Closing that ARPU gap, even partially, could have a huge impact on the top line down the road.
Makes sense. What about that other user trend, the logged out versus logged in?
Right. Logged out DAUQ grew faster at 38%.
Compared to 23% for logged-in users, what does that imply?
Well, it suggests a lot of people are consuming Reddit content passively, without an account.
Lurkers, basically.
Kinda, yeah. And that's a big pool of users Reddit could potentially convert into registered members.
Which would presumably make them easier to monetize. More engagement, better ad targeting, that sort of thing.
Exactly. It's a clear opportunity for them.
Okay, so revenue growth, user growth, especially international. Let's circle back to that profitability jump.
Hmm.
What else helped them get there besides just more revenue?
Well, the revenue growth itself provides a lot of leverage, right?
Mhm.
Spreads fixed costs over more dollars.
Sure, operational leverage.
But they also mentioned stock-based compensation normalizing. It was likely much higher around the IPO last year.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. IPO-related expenses falling away.
And generally, they seem to have kept a lid on costs relative to revenue. R&D, sales and marketing, G&A, all decreased as a percentage of revenue.
So better cost discipline alongside the growth. Signs of a maturing operation.
Definitely. Oh, and don't forget the $20.5 million in other income, mostly interest on their cash pile.
Right, that helps the bottom line too. And speaking of cash, their balance sheet looks really solid.
Extremely solid. They've got $1.95 billion in cash and marketable securities.
Which is like most of their total assets, right? Total assets are $2.44 billion.
Yeah, and liabilities are pretty low, only about $220 million.
That kind of war chest gives them a ton of flexibility.
It really does. They can invest in growth, maybe look at acquisitions, potentially return capital to shareholders someday. Options are open.
Okay, so looking forward, what are they guiding for Q2?
For the second quarter, they're projecting revenue between $410 million and $430 million.
Which represents, what, about 48% to 55% year-over-year growth?
Yeah, still very strong growth, but a bit of a slowdown from Q1's 61%.
Maybe just being conservative, or maybe expecting growth to moderate slightly.
Could be either, or both. Hard to say, but still very healthy growth.
And profitability for Q2.
Adjusted EBITDA guidance is $110 million to $130 million. So similar healthy margins to Q1. Suggests they expect to maintain that operational efficiency.
Interesting, they didn't give full year guidance, though.
Yeah, that's pretty common for companies experiencing rapid growth or in dynamic markets. Gives them more flexibility quarter to quarter.
Makes sense. Now, the report also lays out what Reddit sees as its big opportunities and risks. What stands out there?
Well, on the opportunity side, we've hit on a few already. Closing that international ARPU gap is huge.
Definitely.
Converting logged out users. Improving their ad products.
Mhm.
And then there's that other revenue potential, specifically mentioning data licensing, API access, maybe even dipping toes into e-commerce or affiliate stuff.
All sounds like logical growth paths. What about the risks they flagged?
The usual suspects for a platform like this, really. Intense competition, always a factor.
Their social media is tough.
Content moderation challenges, that's a constant battle for them. The ups and downs of the ad market. Potential regulatory changes, especially around data.
Right. Privacy regulations and things like that.
And also their current reliance on the U.S. market for the bulk of their revenue, despite users being more global.
Okay. So good awareness of the potential headwinds. So if we try to bring it all together from this Q1 report, what are the key strengths shining through right now?
I'd say truly exceptional revenue growth. Strong user growth momentum, that dramatic profitability turnaround is key. Expanding margins showing efficiency and very healthy cash flow generation. Plus the strong balance sheet.
Quite a list. And the main things to keep an eye on going forward. The areas to monitor.
Definitely watch their progress on converting those logged out users. That's number one for me.
Okay.
Then how effectively they could start closing that international ARP gap. Progress on diversifying revenue beyond ads.
Right, that other revenue category.
Exactly. Also, how they manage content moderation costs and effectiveness, and of course, how they navigate the competitive pressures.
Got it. So wrapping up, it feels like Q1 2025 was a really significant step for Reddit as a public company. They showed they can seriously monetize that user base and, maybe more importantly, do it profitably.
Totally agree. It's a major proof point. And that international user base versus the low international ARPU, it just hangs out there as this massive potential growth lever.
If they can pull it correctly.
If they can pull it. The execution in those international markets will be absolutely critical.
Which leads us nicely to our final thought for you, the listener. Think about this. Reddit has more users outside the US than inside now. But the money per user is dramatically lower internationally. If they manage to crack that code, if they successfully boost monetization globally, what could that really mean for their overall revenue and valuation long term? Consider the scale of that opportunity if that ARPU gap starts to narrow. Something to ponder.
Definitely something to think about.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.